Guys, I have a book. Do you have a book?
I have a book.
You have a book? TJ, do you have a book over there?
I do have a book, yeah.
Look at us all having a copy of On Our Way Home by Mike Florio just in time for the holidays. You should get it too. And the author of this, as well as the creator of Pro Football Talk, rejoins us here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great, and I also have mine. If you recall, last time I wasn't able to get up and get it because I was not wearing pants. So, and I've got to say this: I got to give you credit.
Yes, sir.
Credit where it's due.
Yeah.
I offered to send you a handful of copies, but you insisted on making the purchase to support the local animal shelter here that we're giving every penny that I get to. So I appreciate you for doing that.
No, Mike, I appreciate you for doing that as well. And also, again, I'm not the guy, after having written a book back in the day in 2007, I truly and always impressed whenever anybody actually takes the time to write something, let alone also having other things in their lives. It ain't easy. So supporting that venture is also very important. So,
I appreciate it very much. It's fun. It gives me balance. It balances out my life. I make some time. It's a little harder, I'm learning, during football season when I travel every single weekend, but still, it's a nice balance to what I do every day.
And do you do Lego for that as well? Because I think I saw in your background over your right shoulder, what do we have? What is that Lego that you have behind you there, Mike?
That's the Ghostbusters firehouse, and I think the Saturn V rocket is back there. That was part of the pandemic. Yeah. Let's find a way to not lose our freaking minds project.
Oh, dude.
And Lego is very good for that. Lego is very good for Serenity Now. Frank Costanza, what was Serenity Now? I think Lego would have worked better for Lloyd Braun.
Mike Florio, with 3 children, younger than yours, in my house, during the pandemic, we now currently have in our house the Roman Colosseum, the Eiffel Tower, I believe the Sydney Opera House.
You have a lot of Legos.
Wait a minute, about 4 cars, a roller coaster, an entire amusement park, a merry-go-round. That's what we did. That's what we did. So I'm with you.
And you haven't lived until you step on one of those blocks.
Nope.
All right, let's jump into the news of the day. What did you make of David Tepper's press conference? I was confused when he said that they were thinking of trading up to 2 because they thought the Texans were going to go 1 for Young, and they were thinking of going to get Stroud. Suss that one out for me. I got confused by that, Mike.
I was at first too, and then I got to thinking and remembering some of the reporting that happened at the time. And our friend Jay Glazer had reported at the time that initially the Bears were talking about a flip-flop with the Texans so the Texans could get number 1, and then Panthers-Bears 2 and 9. So it would have been end result Texans-Panthers 1-2. That may be what Tepper was referring to in a roundabout way without providing the background and potentially confusing people who are like, wait a minute, how do the Texans end up drafting before you? That's how 1-2 flip-flop and then 2-9 trade.
I appreciate that. So what did you make of him saying, hey, it's been reported, let's talk about it. Yeah, we were thinking about CJ Stroud, but we love Bryce Young. What'd you make of that, Mike?
Well, there are 2 important facts that I am going to try to confirm or debunk. And the problem is people aren't going to be willing to say anything on the record. The folks who have been fired have buyouts that hinge on keeping your mouth shut about anything regarding the team, or you jeopardize the ongoing payments. But Tepper said 2 things. 1, it was unanimous among the coaches and the scouts that Young was the guy. And 2, he didn't chime in. The owner didn't chime in until the very end of the process, until everybody else had weighed in on what they wanted to do. That to me is critical if it's true. And I tend to think it isn't. One of the metaphors I'll use, or simile as the case may be, for somebody who's really rich and very powerful. And it's a twist on the old Steinbrenner calzone thing. Like if you walk in the front door of the building and the receptionist has a bowl of Kit Kats, and the owner has never seen a Kit Kat before and pops one open and eats it and says, that's the best candy I've ever had in my life. That's all he has to say. Everywhere you look from that day forward, every drawer you open, every cabinet that you pull in your direction, Kit Kats are going to be falling out everywhere. That's the power and influence implicit in being a multi-billionaire. You never have to say go buy Kit Kats. All you have to say in the presence of someone who works for you, I really like that Kit Kat. So that's what I want to know. Did Bryce Young get any sort of direct, indirect, subtle, explicit, whatever comment from David Tepper that caused people to think, well, we know where the boss is going to be at the end of the day, so let's just get there on our own.
So the question I have is, because, Tepper's like, I'd love to have a coach here for 20, 30 years, even speaking at my eulogy. And that does compute, certainly if he is at all drawing from his previous ownership experience coming from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who will have one fewer coach since 1969 than Tepper's had as Carolina owner when he hires his next coach. So I guess my question for you is this an outlier along with Mark Davis now that we've had two guys bounced in the middle of the season? Frank Reich is now the first coach in the Super Bowl era to get bounced in back-to-back seasons by two different teams. Are we seeing a new impetuousness of NFL owners right now, Mike? What do you think?
Well, I think we are, and I think we aren't, because this isn't a new trend. And Jim Irsay was willing to fire Frank Reich last year during the season, I think because Irsay was hell-bent on giving Jeff Saturday a test drive, and we saw how that went after the first game. That was a win over the Raiders. Every game after that was a loss. But you've got so much money. Number one, there's no salary cap for coaches. So the coaching pay over the last 50 years hasn't risen at the same rate player pay has. You can easily justify in your budget buying out a coach if you want to move on. And I think there's so much pressure and reaction and social media. There's less patience across the board in the NFL. There's less patience with the players. There's less patience with the coaches. And when somebody comes in right away, look at what DeMeco Ryans did this year and what he's doing in Houston. That gets guys fired because owners think all I have to do is make the right hire. If I make the right hire, the right guy at the right time, we're set. And if we get the right quarterback at the right time, we're set. And everybody wants to have that dynasty. Everyone wants to stand out among the other billionaires as the next Robert Kraft figure, the one who can say, look at all these rings we've amassed. So I do think there's less patience than there was because there's plenty of money to finance this ricocheting from coach to coach to coach.
So where do you place the over-under line of number of vacancies we're going to have about, what would you say, 5 weeks from now, Mike?
Well, I was running through it yesterday. Belichick, it's almost a given that he's not going to be back. That would be the biggest shocker at this point, is if he just comes back and it's like nothing ever happened. Brandon Staley seems to be in grave danger. Is there another kind? Ron Rivera seems to be coaching out the string in Washington before major changes are made by new ownership there. And then there are others that kind of fall into the who knows what's going to happen. Let's see how it plays out. How they do down the stretch could be a factor. Matt Eberflus in Chicago, last night's win surely helps. Dennis Allen in New Orleans, there's some unrest among the fans as to what's going to happen going forward. But, we see every year it's somewhere between 4 and 8. And a lot of it just depends upon how the season ends. And that's why the 2 extra playoff spots have been very helpful, because for a lot of coaches, the mandate is get to the playoffs or else. Well, okay, we've got 14 spots now instead of 12. That's 2 coaches every year, potentially, who otherwise would have been out, who get saved.
What about Buffalo? You didn't mention Buffalo. Oh. You didn't mention even the Jets. I think it would be unfair, quite frankly, if Saleh eats it, because, the Achilles popped. And even if he was part of the process that says, don't bring in another quarterback in here, we got the room right. The offensive line, he didn't go and knock Vera Tuck out for the year. Again, that's just me caping for him right now. But what do you think about others? Because right now, the 2 vacancies you have now, you mentioned 2 others that we'll see down the stretch, guys, and 3 that you think's out. That's 7 right there, Mike.
Well, and I inadvertently omitted Sean McDermott because I believe if the Bills don't make the playoffs, there will be major changes in Buffalo, either GM or head coach or both, to get somebody who has an offensive background to get the most out of Josh Allen and the talent around him. But they have a limited window of years that Josh Allen is going to be the quarterback of the Bills. They've got to get what they can while they can out of Josh Allen. As to Saleh, I'm with you. They sold their souls for Aaron Rodgers, and the devil collected before they could even get a single drive out of it. This is all about next year. And I think the sooner that Woody Johnson comes out and says it, and I think before that, Aaron Rodgers needs to come out and say, I'm definitely coming back next year. And I think, Rodgers maybe dangles that to get what he wants. Like, hey, I want to come back and play a few games this year, even though it makes no sense. I just want to do it. Oh, and by the way, I haven't announced with 100% certainty that I'm coming back next year. I think Rodgers needs to use his weekly platform, which is going to happen at some point this afternoon, and say at some point, I am definitely coming back next year. And then after he does it, that's when Woody Johnson needs to say, we're bringing everybody back. We're going to do next year what we were going to do this year if Aaron Rodgers had been healthy. So I think everybody should get a pass, because how do you get the most out of Aaron Rodgers if you bring in a new head coach? And there's no buddy of Aaron Rodgers out there that is just lurking to come be the head coach of the Jets. He loves the fact that Saleh is a defensive head coach and that the defense is good and he can work with his buddy Nathaniel Hackett to take care of the offense. So I don't think you change anything in New York as long as Rodgers is coming back.
What do you think of I'll do it because, again, they're down right now in Columbus, Ohio. I'll throw them a little bouquet here. Vrabel's not going to lose his gig in Tennessee, is he? I mean, they'd be nuts to do that. But like every Ohio State fan, that's their dream right now, is if Vrabel becomes free and they somehow make that move and swing that axe collegiately.
I think the real question, Rich, with the Titans isn't whether the Titans should be thinking about moving on from Vrabel. It's whether Vrabel should be thinking about moving on from the Titans. And I go back to 2022 draft when he does the neck thing, when they traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles. And I know he won the power struggle with John Robinson, but there are still maybe some organizational things he's not thrilled about. Earlier this year, before the trade deadline, when there was talk about maybe moving a Derrick Henry or DeAndre Hopkins, Vrabel didn't want to have anything to do with a rebuild or a reset. I just wonder whether he decides on his own, I'd like to go somewhere else. And somebody told me on July 4th, somebody I know, somebody I trust, somebody who's been around the NFL for a long time, said, I have no information to back this up, but keep an eye on the possibility of the Patriots trying to get Mike Vrabel to be the successor to Bill Belichick. Now, everybody thinks Gerard Mayo is already signed, sealed, and delivered, but they put Vrabel in their Hall of Fame this year. So if there's going to be any sentimental pull for him, whether it's halfway between Columbus and halfway between Foxborough, I think that a great potential offseason story is the Patriots trade, as a practical matter, Bill Belichick, and whatever they get for Belichick, they use to go get Mike Vrabel to come back to New England and be the successor to Belichick there. That is all speculation. That is all just throwing darts.
Yep.
But I think the question of whether the Titans are fed up with Vrabel is the wrong question. It's whether Vrabel is fed up with the Titans.
Well, Belichick said on his local radio appearance on Monday that it was, quote unquote, ridiculous that he already knows where his next destination is. What do you think?
Well, I think if he'd already know right now, yeah, it probably is premature. But even if he already knows, he's not going to say it out loud. Right? You're not going to come out and say, you know what, we've worked a secret deal already, where the Patriots are going to trade me to the Chargers, and here's what the Chargers are going to pay me. I think when you guys reported on the Game Day show a couple of weeks ago, the context of the new Belichick contract, 2023, 2024, and Ian Rappaport mentioned the Patriots aren't inclined to fire him during the season because they'd like to get value for him after the season. That was the message to everybody out there that's going to be looking for a coach. You got to deal with us if you want Bill Belichick. You don't just make your wish list and activate it the day after the season ends. We're not going to fire this guy on Black Monday or on Black Sunday as it's become in recent years.
Yes.
You have to deal with us. So all that happens behind the scenes. The dominoes get lined up now, and then at the right time, the first one gets flicked. And the last thing Belichick would ever admit to is that the wheels are already in motion. This is exactly what the Dolphins were trying to do with Sean Payton and Tom Brady a couple of years ago. Line it up ahead of time and then activate it at the right time. It's not the right time to activate.
So then one last guess that I'll ask from you. Normally when teams fire coaches early or during the season, it's because they want to get a head start, or there's somebody out there that they want to contact, or under the radar, all of that stuff. Who might that be? Could it be my guy in college too, Mike, with all that speculation? What do you think?
Well, another Glazer nugget from not that long ago, the idea that the teams in the NFL have looked into the Connor Stallion situation and they're not uncomfortable with the notion of bringing Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL if that's how it plays out. But there was still that report, again, NFL Network, the idea that the league is considering some sort of suspension that would be...
That's crazy talk. Don't you think that's crazy talk?
I know. But, hey, Rich, they do what they want. They do what they want. And I can say this. You can't. I can say this. Here's what they do. They figure out where they want to be, and they work backward to justify it. So we want to pander to the organization that's in charge of our free farm system. We don't want to piss them off any more than we already do by luring their players here. So we're going to respect the Jim Harbaugh suspension. Let's find a way to do it. They did it to Jim Tressel. They did it to Terrell Pryor. They came up with a rule that somehow was violated, and they suspended these guys as a olive branch to the NCAA. So I thought that wasn't a mistake that it came out when it did, because it's a warning to anyone who's thinking about hiring Jim Harbaugh. Hey, if he gets suspended X number of games by the NCAA, you're not going to have him. I think it would be wrong. It would be a violation of whatever rules are on the books. But at the end of the day, they do what they want to do, and they make it up as they go. Again, I can say that. I say it all the time. They haven't gotten me fired yet, so I'll keep saying it. They make it up as they go. They do what they want, just like Cartman. I do what I want.
Nice.
And they don't care about the consequences.
So do you have a name? Anybody else then outside of Harbaugh? Anybody that you're hearing that is the hot candidate that everyone's going to be all over? What do you got
from college?
Or just anywhere? What do you think? Because this is all coming. You gave me 7. It could be 10 openings. You know what I mean?
And look, there's the usual suspects every year. The hot coordinators from the teams that have done really well. Ben Johnson last year removed his name from consideration. I'm always suspicious when someone does that. They often do it because they find out they're not going to get the job anyway. But Ben Johnson is the name that's been kicked around all year. Creative offense. You know, people are already saying Carolina. Again, I think anybody who's got options is going to opt to go somewhere other than to work for David Tepper. And there's going to be plenty of coaches who don't want to work with a 5'10" quarterback. I'd say up to 2/3 of the league would say, "No, we want a guy who's north of 6 foot. Right. We don't want to work with a quarterback who's that short." So it's going to be hard for the Panthers, I think, to find a guy who's got choices. Ben Johnson may be the guy who has choices. And the job that's going to be the most attractive, if you're talking about choices, is the job that has the best quarterback built in. And by all appearances, that's the Chargers, if Brandon Staley ends up being out in L.A.
Mike, thanks again. On our way home, you can get it where all books are sold. Amazon, for sure.
Go to Amazon. Exclusively at Amazon. $3.99 for the ebook, $9.99 for the print edition. Everything I get goes to the Humane Society of Harrison County. And thanks again, Rich, for supporting the cause.
Attaboy. Well done, Mike. So it's exclusive to Amazon. Go to Amazon.com and put in On Our Way Home. It's for a great cause. It's a fun stocking stuffer, if you will. Mike, thanks again, brother.
You can curl it up and it'll fit. I hadn't thought of that.
There you go.
It curls up and you just...
See? Takes the Jewish guy to think about that. There you go.
What is $9.99? You can get a bunch of gifts for people for $9.99.
So simple. Take care of yourself, Mike. You be well.
Thanks.
That's Mike Florio, everybody, right here in The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.